I wanted to start the show today a little bit different direction than we've been going recently. By now, you know that Bill O'Brien, Alabama offensive coordinator, is headed up to New England to be the Patriots' new offensive coordinator. You know that Pete Golding, their defensive coordinator, moved along to Oxford, Mississippi, and Nick Saban's going to be replacing both coordinators in Tuscaloosa. I don't really have any interest in talking about that right now, but it did make me think, what about this LSU staff? Now, I personally am a homebody. I'm not very venturesome. I'm not very cultured. I don't have grandiose thoughts of seeing the world and experiencing other cultures. I like it in South Louisiana. I'm pretty good down here. Like the weather. Like being close to LSU. My family's here. I'm good. Have no interest in moving to Houston or moving to New York or seeing the West Coast. That's not me. I moved down here. I lived for 18 years in Shreveport. And then I moved down here for college at 18, and I've never left. I briefly stayed at my aunt and uncle's in New Orleans during the week, but still had residence in Baton Rouge. That's the way that I'm wired. Coaches can't be that way. That profession churns them in and churns them out. You're moving all over the place all the time. I'm fascinated sometimes when I talk with some of these coaches during the football season when I go up there for that midweek interview that we record for the pregame show. And usually I try to get in and out of there in 5 minutes and let them get back to watching tape or calling recruits or whatever it is that they're doing. They're busy people and I don't need to be in there talking. But sometimes I get pulled in and they just want to chat for a bit, which is fine. And I'm happy to do so. And sometimes I pull some interesting nuggets out of it. I'm talking to Jake Peets, who's got 4 or 5 kids. He's got a lot of kids, maybe 6. I'm not sure how many. He's got a lot. And he was going to move 3 places in 3 years with 6 kids. I don't want to move ever. Ever. Moving is awful. And he's doing it constantly. But that's the life you sign up for. And a lot of times it pays pretty well. But it requires a lot of upheaval. And that's just part of the gig. And so it's not always good or bad when people move or stay put. Nick Saban runs through coordinators by the year over there. They seem to do okay. But sometimes a little stability is a good thing. And LSU's had none over the last 3 years. You win the national championship in 19. Joe Brady's going to leave to go be the offensive coordinator at the Panthers. Dave Aranda's going to take the head coaching job at Baylor. Okay, we got to figure something out here. When comes Bo Pelini? And eventually Steve Ensminger retires. So you got to figure out something on that front. Can't really find anybody, so you bring in Jake Peets to do it, and Bo Pelini is let go and don't want to deal with that. So all of a sudden, when you took the field against Florida State this year, LSU was on their 4th defensive coordinator in 4 years. 4th in 4 years. That's hard to deal with. Learning a new offensive system can be tough. LSU's doing it with Brady coming in, and then Ensminger moves on, trying to deal with Peets, and he moves on, and now you bring in Denbrock, and you got to deal with that, and you get a new quarterback coming in, and LSU just needed some stability. So you bring in Brian Kelly, and he puts together a staff, and he goes out and decides Mike Denbrock's going to be his guy on the offensive coordinator spot. In terms of putting the roster together, we got to put a staff of people that can handle recruiting. So he goes and gets Brian Polian, who he trusts to help be the recruiting coordinator. He immediately goes and gets Frank Wilson to come in and coach running backs. Kerry Cooks at safety. Robert Steeples at cornerback. Jamar Kane on the defensive line. Cortez Hankton over from the national champion Georgia program at wide receiver. He decides to keep Brad Davis around at offensive line. Joe Sloan's going to coach the quarterbacks. Going to bring in Jake Flint to be the director of athletic development, strength coach in layman's terms. And that's going to be the staff that he puts together. Finally, at the end, Matt House comes in to be defensive coordinator. And to wait for the Chiefs to finish their season. And you look at this and you see the pros and cons, and you understand that most of the time when you hire a staff, you feel pretty good about it. Most of the time, you don't hire the guy who just went 1-13. You don't usually hire the guy who was run out of town his last job. You usually hire somebody on the up and up or a very established name. especially if you're Brian Kelly and you've got as many skins on the wall as he does. And that's what you had with this staff. They had Louisiana ties. There were elite recruiters. There were proven play callers on both sides of the ball. It was a staff that seemed to make a lot of sense. And then you look at what LSU was this year offensively and defensively. And you look at the Florida State game where they couldn't get anything going offensively in the first half. Mississippi State game couldn't get anything going offensively in the first half. But they started cooking a little bit in the second half of both of those games. Look at Florida later on in the season. 6 straight touchdown drives. They go right down the field and score. LSU's offense got markedly better as the season went on. Maybe a step back at Arkansas. A&M wasn't perfect. Georgia's a tough matchup. Okay. It wasn't perfect, but I could certainly make the claim that offense got better as the season went on. And on defense, great against Florida State most of the second half. Phenomenal against Mississippi State in the second half. Phenomenal against Ole Miss in the second half. Shut them out. Great work against Alabama. All the weapons that they've got and Heisman Trophy quarterback. That defense was tough and made some significant strides in second halves of games once they figured things out. And I say all this to tell you that I think LSU was well coached this past year. You know that's not exactly my corner of the store. X's and O's, adjustments, attacking offenses, attacking defenses, creating mismatches. That's not where I do most of my talking here on the football side of things. I bring on guests for that. I can bring up stats. I can tell you what things look like. I can certainly tell you, hey, Ole Miss didn't score in the second half. I think they did a pretty good job after they got down 17-0. I thought the coaching staff did a good job. And what did I start the segment saying? Stability is what they needed. Well, you look up as the college football coaching carousel has slowed down dramatically. And, you know, there are opportunities in the NFL, but I don't see a ton of guys in this list outside of Matt House, Brian Polian, that have done a lot in the NFL. Robert Steeples was in the NFL at one point, but went to high school and then to college. So it's a staff that's all coming back right now. And would it shock me if somebody off this staff got another opportunity in the next 3 weeks? No, it would not. I'm not here to tell you that 100% certain when they go to Florida State and Orlando that this is the exact staff, but it could be. It could be. And that's exactly what the doctor ordered for this program that has just, since they got off the stage in New Orleans after the national championship game, been peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, unrest. It was just a mess at times with all the ins and outs. Whew. Now it just feels like, okay, we got our feet on the ground. And assistant coaches don't stay very long, so I don't expect everybody to be back, certainly the next year. But right now, the way things look is that LSU is on very stable footing, and that's exactly what you make the offer to Brian Kelly for. Has he won national championships at the college level? No. But he's been close. And he has done a great job of assembling staffs wherever he's been. And that seems to be the case right now with this staff. I mean, I feel like if you're an LSU fan and you're listening to me right now and you see what you saw on the field this past year, you see what they've done in recruiting, and you look at what next year looks like, you feel pretty good about where this coaching staff is. And sometimes over the last 3 years, that has not been the case. Stability is such a good thing. And look, there are examples to the contrary. Arkansas won 9 games 2 years ago, however you want to characterize the 2021 season. But they were coming into this past fall with their coordinators back, one of a handful of teams in the Power 5 that had their their assistants, their coordinators back the third year in a row. And they weren't very good last year. So it's not a foolproof thing, but I think it's more good than bad. And then again, on the flip side, Saban turns them in and out. But they seem to be okay. But I just like where LSU sits right now from a coaching perspective. I think the staff did a really good job last year, and it looks like nearly all of it, if not every single bit of it, is coming back. And that is very, very good for LSU. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Hunt Palmer Show on YouTube. If you don't mind, throw us a like right below and hit the subscribe button. We'll see you next time.